Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for your kind words. And my thanks also to the organizers for inviting me. It is an honor and a pleasure to be here. And congratulations to the stalwarts who are still here after 2 days of very intensive discussion. I apologize that I was not able to attend the proceedings yesterday and today, but my colleague Dr. Andrew Yeager was here and he kept me informed almost on a session-by-session basis of what has happened, and I'm really very happy to hear about the developments in the conference. I'm also very happy to see my good friend Hunter Lovins and Dr. Amadei, and I also noticed on the program John Bryson and some of the UN colleagues who had spoken here. So by all accounts, I'm very impressed with the quality of the people who have addressed this and the comments that they have made. Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to say 2 or 3 things in closing. This is in part a reflection of what I know has happened here, but in part a reflection of the work that we in the Division for Sustainable Development have done, both in regard to climate change, but also in regard to the Sustainable Development Agenda generally. My own view when I first looked at this agenda was that this is an extremely timely conference. And this is not only because the timeliness is not only because of the climate agenda. We all know that, 96 days left before Copenhagen, kind of a landmark event in the one of the milestones which we will look back, hopefully, with a great deal of pride when we look back at this time in history. But also less than 3 weeks from the climate summit that's going to take place here in this building. But it's not only for that reason, but also because I think this focus on energy access, global access to sustainable energy, this, it seems to me, is one of the best way of approaching the challenges that we confront, that our generation confronts today. And I see it particularly now, speaking a little bit parochially, as a good example of sustainable development. And just to say a couple of words on this, my own view, and one of the reasons why I'm a partisan of sustainable development, is that I see sustainable development as a bridge between different agendas, between different communities, between different ways of approaching the issues. It's obviously a bridge between sustainability considerations and developmental considerations, but it is also a bridge between the North and South. It is one of the ways in which we have tried to bring the North and South together onto a common agenda and a common platform. It's also a bridge between the past and the present and the future. I mean, it's a way of thinking long-term, but then converting it into practical actions. It's a bridge, interestingly, although this is something which has kind of slipped a little bit, it's a bridge between government, business, and civil society. If you go back to 1992, when Sustainable Development Agenda was launched in the Rio conference, the entire idea of a partnership, a collaboration between government, business, and civil society was in some sense enshrined in the very framework of that conference and what came out of that conference, how we have tried to implement it. All of these things about public-private partnership essentially date from that period when we started thinking about this thing. It's a bridge between efficiency and equity, and it's a bridge between the vision of the good life and practical action. I mean, what do we do at this moment? So I think that sustainable development provides that bridge. One particular point on that bridge, I should say, is that we in the sustainable development community have, in some sense, a dual challenge. On the one hand, we do need to be very practical people of saying, what do we do now? But on the other hand, we also need to be people who can look far into the future and say, what are the challenges of humanity? What are the things that we need to look at as we go forward? Sustainability is really a long-term consideration. We need to think in 100-year terms, 1,000-year terms, in order to understand what is sustainable and how do we move towards that direction. But then we need to sort of bring that back into today. And one of the things that we do is we try to think in terms of transitions. Not in terms of abrupt changes, but things that take time. How do you bring about this transition? We've gone through the demographic transition. Hopefully, it's sort of coming to a stable level. We have to go through a number of other transitions, including in the energy domain, including in the climate domain, including in our use of materials and resources and natural resources. All of these transitions we have to go through if we are going to live on this planet for more than 100 or 200 years. If we are going to live for long, then we really require to think in those longer terms. One of my great aunts who died at the ripe old age of 90, she used to say that if I had known that I was going to live so long, I would have taken better care of my body. Likewise, if we think that we are going to live on this planet for, 1,000,000 or 10,000 or a long period of time, then we better take care of the body. If we think we're only here for 100 years out like a flash, it doesn't matter. I mean, we can really have a bonanza. Now, the reason I say this is that I do believe that energy access provides that kind of the entry point for thinking about a number of these sustainable development issues in a way in which they can bring this together. It is, in my sense, the practical foundation in real life about thinking about the energy challenges today. It really is kind of the brute reality of where we are in terms of solving the problem. If we think of the other energy agendas, the renewable energy agenda or the energy efficiency agenda, they're all, in some sense, in today's world, have to be derived from this agenda. I mean, if you think of energy efficiency, we know that the greatest success in energy efficiency is the shift to many traditional forms of energy use towards modern forms of energy use. This introduces a degree of efficiency, and we do want that efficiency to happen. But it is also something which brings about improvements in human development, about which I will have something to say in a minute. That's why this is the bridging function. Even if you think in terms of renewable energy, if we did not live in a world in which 80% of the world was poor, did not have resources, it would not be a major problem to solve the problem of renewable energy, to shift to higher cost renewable energy very quickly. The problem is we do live in such a world in which 80% of the people are poor, cannot even afford conventional modern energy. And on top of that, if you're trying to think about solutions which are higher cost, which impose higher cost, it is impossible. That's why, there's the old saying that we don't have the money, therefore we have to think. This is the problem. We don't have the money. There are huge numbers of people who don't have the money who have to think, and that's why we need our imagination. We need our ways of bringing the agendas together. So I believe that energy access is really the ground reality of shaping the energy challenges in the future. It's also the ground reality which shapes the climate challenge. Because energy is a way not only for meeting the human development needs of the populations, but it is also, as we know, has become a means of contributing, in fact, being the biggest contributor to the climate problem. And so we need to reconcile these two things in order to solve the problem. Now, I just want to say a couple of things, and I want to come to my final point. One of the things I want to say, and this is a very important point, on energy access, we believe, and certainly the work that we have done in my division, we believe that it is a cliche to keep referring only to the 1.5 or 2 billion people who do not have access to modern energy services at all. Yes, that is true, but the problem of energy access goes far beyond it. Because of the people who do have energy access, very large number of them have inadequate access to intermittent, unpredictable, and low-quality energy services, and to inefficient energy services, that for the same amount of primary energy they consume, they get very little in terms of end-use energy. And that's a very significant problem around the world. When we look at the numbers, of course, energy, the problem is that there are so many different units that it's very difficult to make sense of them. We have tried to work with one single unit, and that is kilowatt hours, not of electricity, but of energy, kilowatt hours per capita per day. And we find that the global average is 55. The OECD average is roughly about 130, 140, although some countries are around 100, and some countries are, and you can guess which one, are about 250 or higher. The developing countries, by and large, have about, the huge majorities, sub-Saharan Africa, South Asia, about 15 kilowatt hours per capita per day. Developing countries, by and large, 35. Middle-income countries have much higher, and in some cases, almost the same as OECD countries. I mean, that's the kind of range. Now, when you look at the countries at the lower end, 15, 20, 25, 35, they actually need much larger volumes of energy in order to be able to meet their human development